Going on, everybody? Just want to go over what your monthly payment's going to look like if you're looking to purchase a property. I know a lot of videos out there kind of give you a ballpark, and sometimes those numbers are not actually accurate because they're not going to take into consideration if you have debt. So, the easiest way to do this is, and we're going to do an example in today's video. I'm just going to write it all out because it's easier. I'm going to use very, very reasonable numbers. What I mean by that is, what is the most common salary that most folks have? And we're going to use those numbers. So let's start off. Right now, we could start off with, let's say, $65,000 a year. So what you want to do is write out $65,000 a year. What I'm doing with that number actually is just take 65,000 and divide that by 12, okay? Because what we're trying to get to is, what is your total monthly gross? When you apply for a mortgage, the mortgage company on the underwriting is going to use your total gross for the month. They're not going to go based on net. They're going to go based on gross, okay? Gross is what you get before taxes. So back to the example of 65,000 a year. That comes out to monthly roughly $5,416. So in this example, we're going to use that number. So $5,416. That is your total gross. Now, this is super important to keep in mind, especially if you want to narrow it down to a simple, easy number to work with, because you have to keep in mind, when you go to get pre-approved for a mortgage, and I see this all the time, the bank's going to approve you for a lot more than typically you might feel comfortable paying. And I always recommend go with a monthly payment that you're comfortable with. Try not to go too high, because you might get stuck in situations where the property might need some money in the future, something breaks, you have an emergency. Try not to live, basically above your means, right? I typically try to tell people to stay in a comfortable budget, okay? So back to that example. So we're getting $5,416 per month gross, okay? So the bank is typically going to allow anywhere from 2 to 3x that amount, okay? But in this example, we're going to do a standard loan. Your DTI stands for debt to income ratio, okay? The debt to income ratio on a conventional loan and an FHA loan are completely different, okay? It also determines your credit score. But we're going to be very, very conservative with the numbers in this example. Now, DTI for this specific deal or this house, we're going to go with 50%, because FHA, you can actually go much higher than 50%. So it's really easy. Get a calculator, $5,416 divided by 2. What do you get? $2,708. The $2,708, when you write this out, when you start writing this out, that's the maximum DTI you're allowed, okay? What do I mean by that? That's the maximum amount that they're willing to allow you to borrow monthly. Now, here's the one piece that most of us miss, and I missed it when I first started off. We all think, hey, we make 5, 6, 8, whatever it is, a couple $1,000s a month. Hey, we can afford, let's say a $3,000 mortgage or a $4,000 mortgage. Well, the reality is, on gross, no, because you still have to take into consideration your taxes. Now, to be on the safe side, like I said earlier, it's typically going to be capped around 52 to 54%, but we're going to be really, really conservative, because I don't think you should go above 40%, in my opinion. But let's just say you stretch it a little bit. You found that house you really, really love. You foresee in the future possibly some extra overtime, so you can make some extra cash just to, throw it towards the mortgage. Perfect. Now, $2,708 is your total gross for the month as far as the mortgage. That's the cap that the lender's going to allow you, right? Now you have to start minusing all of your liabilities. What is a liability? On your credit report, the liabilities are going to be credit cards, amortized loans, any personal loans, student loans, things like that. They don't take the whole amount of debt. If you have like $300,000 worth of debt, they're not going to use that debt against you. What they use is the minimums. So let's say you owe Capital One $50 a month. You owe American Express, minimum payment is $100 a month. They're going to minus the $150 per month as a liability off the $2,708 because that's the maximum you're allowed to borrow monthly. So let's use that as an example just so you guys can see it. Let's say you have a couple credit cards. You have, let's say, an auto loan, okay? The total amount that all those liabilities equal that you're liable for every month on your credit report, let's just say it's $500, right? It's pretty reasonable, right? I'm pretty sure most of you guys have car loans or car payments that are at least $300, right? Or close to it, maybe a couple credit cards. So let's just say it's $500. Out of the $2,708, you need to minus $500 because, like I said, it is a liability on the credit report, okay? So the question then becomes, how much could you really pay on a mortgage? Like, what are you really qualified for? What is the bank going to approve you for, okay? So that math comes out to $2,208. So once you minus that, this is what they're going to approve you for. $2,208. Total payment. Total payment. Total payment in the sense of mortgage, all the fees, and taxes. Even if you have HOA fees, whatever it may be, some places have that, you have to minus it from this $2,208. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, how much can I really buy with that amount? And that's a great question. It really is. You have to go back to a calculator because it's pretty straightforward, the same way the bank does it. If you're looking at $2,208, you're only going to be somewhere in the ballpark of a couple $100,000, depending on the interest rate, because the interest rate gets factored into that payment. You got to remember that, guys. You cannot forget that. I know it's tricky out there. It's scary. But like I said, you have to keep in mind the interest rate. Right now, the interest rate went back up, unfortunately. The data that came out recently with the job market, the bond market disagrees. They're thinking it's really bad. And it might be. I don't know. But it has gone back up. So, like I said, back to the example. You make $65,000 a year. You have roughly $500 of minimum payments on your credit report, which is car payment and credit cards. Let's say you're putting no money down. We're just using even numbers. Current interest rate right now is 6.5. Might be able to get a little less, might be able to get a little more. If you include property tax on average in the United States, because every place is different. Where I live, property tax is the highest in the country. On average here, it's anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 a year, right? Some places you get a little bit less, like $8,000, but it's super high, right? Let's just go with an even number, $5,000. At $5,000 plus you have your homeowner's insurance and things like that, assuming you have good credit, you can only really qualify for a mortgage payment or a mortgage amount of only $130,000. Maybe you'll get $200,000, close to it. That's why I wanted to explain in this video why it's super important to take that into consideration. Because when you go to get a pre-approval, the lender's going to give you more money, guys. They're going to give you more money. But you really got to sit there and do the math and say, what do you feel comfortable paying? Do you really want to give half of your paycheck to the mortgage? Maybe, maybe not, right? Some people prefer to travel. Some people prefer to waste and save all their money into a house, which is okay too, right? Maybe you want to sell the house in the future and that's your retirement. That's okay. But like I said, you have to remember to add in your debts. The debts are super important. If you don't add in the debts, when you go to close or go to underwriting on a mortgage, you're going to get denied. It's not going to close, unfortunately. Like I said, guys, I'm trying to make the numbers as simple as possible. I use 65,000. If you want to use 70,000 or 85,000, it's still the same. You have to keep in mind the interest rate did go back up. So that's going to affect everyone that's applying for a mortgage, right? As you know, I'm a real estate agent here in the tri-state area, and I go through this every single day. When rates are low, you get to borrow a lot more money. So back in 2020, 21 was the best time to borrow money. Why? Because the interest rate at that time was basically 2.9%. And I was shouting off the top of my lungs telling people, listen, if you can afford the payments, you have a good job, a good career, borrow as much as you can because you're going to beat inflation in the long term. Now, we have an election, 3 weeks from now? About 3 weeks or so. We have still high inflation, right? We're not sure who's going to win for the election. We don't know really what's going on with the job market. It's kind of wishy-washy right now. There's people that are working, but then the numbers look good, but then the market doesn't agree with it. So there's a lot of moving pieces. So then the question becomes, hey, should I buy now? Should I buy later when rates come down? And it's a very, very tough question for me to answer because I'm looking at it from both sides, buyer and seller, right? I typically represent sellers, not so many buyers. Only if I know the person, I'll represent them. But I would say it depends on your situation. If you're a first-time home buyer and you can afford a monthly payment as we speak right now with the current interest rate, okay, of about 6 to 6.5%, you have your down payment saved up, okay, you found a house you like, and you think you can get the offer accepted, do it. Why? Because if the interest rates continue to drop, what's going to happen is if you wait for the rates to keep dropping and you decide to go out there and try to buy, you're going to compete with other people at the same time. And you'll get back into the situation of multiple offers. So if you're a first-time home buyer and you're using FHA, which is very difficult to get approved when there's tremendous demand and limited inventory, you would have to become creative with your financing. So again, if you're thinking about buying, you have everything set up in order, do it. You're not going to regret it later, especially with rates coming down. You can refinance later and you'll be ahead of the game. Now, if you want to wait and see what happens after the election and next year, you can certainly do that as well. There's nothing wrong with that. It gives you an opportunity to save more money, so you can set up your offer to be more aggressive when it comes to multiple offer situations, right? For sellers out there, it's different. If you're a seller, you have everything in order right now, you're looking to retire, maybe you're moving out of state, maybe you're thinking of going to Florida, wherever, right? Your kids are grown, you have equity in your property. Yeah, if you sell now, you're basically selling at a time where there's still limited supply, so you're going to make a good chunk of money on your property. Can you wait? Yes. The other thing you have to consider is if you wait, and I see this all the time because real estate is seasonal. A lot of people will list in the early summer, right after school's basically finished. What happens is there's an influx and a tick up in inventory, which throws off the days on market. And what happens is those buyers that are sitting there, they're going to compare your property to the other properties that are on the market. So competition is not the best idea. I typically don't recommend competition. I would recommend doing it a little before because typically the people that are going to buy, which is the demographic, they're already set up and ready to go, right? So they don't want to compete because they know the market's not necessarily on their side as a buyer. So, like I said, from a buyer's perspective, if you can do it, do it. If you're a seller, that comes down to your personal situation, what's going on the back end, right? As far as monthly payments, please remember, I'm using $65,000 a year, okay? Which is, it's still a good salary. I'll be frank with you. Like when I first made close to that in the beginning, I felt like I was rich, okay? You know, especially when you're living on your own and you're young, that's still a chunk of money. So imagine if you're at 70,000, 75,000, 85,000, up to 100,000. If you're above that, it's a different story, but when you're making $10,000 a month or more and you have no debt, you're going to be okay in that sense, right? But you have to remember those personal liabilities are going to be deducted from the monthly payment. Don't forget that. I don't know if I answered all your questions or if anyone has any questions, but I just had to put this out there because a lot of videos out there, they just never break down the reality of how much could you really afford. I see it all the time. People come in the office, give me a call and say, hey, I'm approved for $800,000. And the reality is when you go to underwriting and I submit the offer, it gets rejected. Why? Because the person was really never approved for $800,000. They were really approved for only $550,000, right? Because there was debt that was on the back end that they didn't take into consideration, right? The monthly payments, the liabilities, right? It's tough out there. I get it, guys. Like I said, the market is very, very interesting right now. There's a lot of moving pieces. Like I said, especially the election. It is the slow time. People do not typically move from now till next year. Why? You have Thanksgiving, you have Christmas, the holidays, New Year's. Who wants to really pack their bags? Like, do you want to pack your bags and move your family? Not really. You're going to wait till the springtime or close to the springtime or summer. And you have to take that into consideration because that's when everybody else wants to come out, right? So it's going to be competitive. I see it all the time. Some of you guys might think, you know, someone overpaying for a house that's on the market, you know, $20K is a lot of money. And yeah, that is a lot of money. You're right. It is. But on the listings that I get, I'm seeing over 100,000 plus, right? There's examples in the MLS of ones that are $300,000 or $400,000 over asking. Imagine a house is listed for $799,000. It had so many offers on it, right? It was like, I think 120 something offers. It made the news. They ended up paying literally over $400K on top of the price just to get the house. That's craziness, right? But there's a strategy behind that, right? Is the house really worth it? In my opinion, no. I feel like you could build a nicer house somewhere far away, but if you want to be in that location, you got to pay the price to play, right? That's just the reality of it, right? There's nothing wrong with overpaying a little bit for a specific property that you really, really want, but you really got to sit there and do the math, do your due diligence, run the comps, take a look at the projections for the next 10, 15 years, because everyone's game plan is different. Some people want to stay in their house for 10 years. Some people want to stay for 20 years. Some people want to stay for 30 years, right? Some people think if they're staying in 5 years. If you're doing something short term, I wouldn't recommend it, because selling real estate short term is very difficult to do, because it's not like a car. It's not that liquid in that sense, right? People are going to know what you paid recently. If you're not doing any forced appreciation, it's not going to work, right? You might actually lose money depending on where it is. So you got to take that into consideration, guys. Like I said, I'm just trying to help people out. I kind of see it every day and I feel bad, and I wish people took the time out to like really think about it, do their research and make the phone calls and come up with a strategy to get their offers accepted. I wish they did, but some of them don't. There's a lot of people out there that make these videos. Excuse me. I'm not going to say names, but there's creators on YouTube, which is really frustrating, but I get it. They do it to, I guess, clickbait us, right? Get our attention. Oh, something's going to happen bad. They say the market's going to crash. Come on, guys. Common sense says the market's not going to crash. The only way the market crashes in real estate is one simple thing. You need massive amounts of unemployment. Like think about it. When you lose your job and everybody loses their job, they're going to lose their house, right? Because they can't pay the payments. Well, right now, everyone's working, right? There's still jobs out there. So there's not going to be a housing crash And it's sad that people keep making these videos, but I see it every day. Why are people still overpaying for a house? Why are they? Why are there still multiple offers on a property? Because demand is still high and supply is low. A lot of people have low interest rates. A lot of people refied or purchased back in 2020 and 2021. They all have 3% interest rates, somewhere in that range. The lowest I seen was like 2.6, 2.7. But they're in that range of that to 3.5%, 4% or less. Why would you sell? Like, it doesn't make sense to sell, right? Keep the house you're in. You're ahead of the game. You have equity, right? The house is appreciating, right? Your payment is low. Like, if you try to buy the same house today, the payment's literally double, right? We just went over here in this example. The payments go up higher and higher. These payments are higher and higher, guys. Like I said, if you're thinking about buying something, do it. If you can afford it, do the math. If you're smart, you'll refi later. If you can't do it, hey, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You could wait, save some more money. Just be prepared to be aggressive. You have to be aggressive to get your offer accepted. There's tricks out there. I don't know if I should kind of go over it because we're not, we don't really share this information, but I try to help people out as much as I can. There's a trick out there for first-time home buyers if they want their offer accepted, okay? I'm just going to tell you guys what it is. So when you first go buy a house and you get pre-approved, you typically would go with FHA, right? FHA is 3.5% down. Check this out. When you get approved for FHA and you have your agent submit your offer to a house, what you can do is, to make your offer aggressive, is you could do what's called the switcheroo. The switcheroo is basically taking your FHA pre-approval, having the lender convert it to conventional 20% down, because a 20% conventional loan is a stronger offer, right? Follow me if you can, guys. So the switcheroo tactic here is take the FHA, convert it over, because it's just a document. It's a piece of paper, guys. It's nothing crazy. You're not closing conventional. You take that pre-approval, 20% down, you put it in the contract. The agent will type it up in the contract. The house is whatever price. We're putting 20% down, $100,000 plus, and we're closing in 45 days when the mortgage gets approved. Once that seller accepts your offer, your lender, the bank on the back end, is going to take the same loan and just convert it back to FHA. Nothing's changed. It's just still FHA. It's just a way to get your offer accepted. It's a tactic that we use to help get buyers' offers accepted on multiple offer situations, especially a first-time buyer, because it's super frustrating when you see a couple in a family or someone young that's worked so hard to like save up their down payment, and they're going around looking at so many houses, submitting so many offers, and they're not getting their offer accepted. It's very frustrating, and it kind of eats you up a little bit because you feel so bad. And it's a tactic that we've been using lately, and it works. The loans still go through because they're still approved FHA. But yeah, that's a little trick that we use on the back end. So I don't want to get into more specifics on it because there are other things you could do with it. But listen, you have to think outside the box if you want a house nowadays. It is what it is. It's not easy for everybody, but I hope that answered some people's questions or concerns, but it's not easy. All right, guys. Until then, I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget, $65,000 with $500 a month in liabilities. Your monthly payment is going to be somewhere around $2,208, okay? You can get a mortgage for that price. Do not think you can't. You can. If you have decent credit or close enough good credit, you have been working at your job for 2 years or more, you're going to get approved, guys, especially if you're W-2. Those salaries work. They still work. Take care, guys. Peace. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.